This is my do-it-yourself DIY Nutcracker Soldier. In this video, I will show you how to make one of your very own. I have the materials that we're going to use to make our Nutcracker Soldier. We have cardboard tubes in various sizes. In choosing your tubes, which can come from wrapping paper rolls, paper towel rolls, vinyl, cricket vinyl rolls, for the bubble wrap rolls, you're going to want a tube for the body that is your widest circumference, and from the body tube you will also use a portion of it for the soldier's hat. For our soldier's head, we're going to use this ornament, so you want a tube that is going to work body and head size. And then you also will need slightly larger tubes here for the legs versus the tube for the arms. So as you can see, you want, when choosing the legs, to make sure that it won't protrude beyond the sides of the tubes. So if you can fit your tubes inside, so that's a good size for your legs. His uniform will be made with just some glitter cardstock, and I have bling wrap to accessorize it. I also have some little foam balls here, glitter foam balls, that will help decorate the uniform, as well as some little rhinestone acrylic gems to decorate the uniform. For his hands, I have these styrofoam balls, and you want to make sure that as far as the size of them, that they will be able to size-wise fit at the bottom of the arms, and that looks fine. I also want to include a spear for this soldier, so I have just a wooden rod, and then I have these little miniature light bulb type ornaments that are pointy, and so I intend to attach that to the end of my spear. And we are going to have a African American Nutcracker Soldier, so I have acrylic paint, brown, and then I also have some white acrylic paint for the portions that I need to paint on the uniform. And lastly, I have just a box that I had left over from, I believe, some chocolate candies, and I'm going to use this as the stand for the Nutcracker Soldier, so we will paint this as well. And for the Nutcracker Soldier shoes, I have some foam that actually half of a pool noodle that I'm going to use in shape to make his shoes. So these, and then these plates are just for when I'm using the paint. And so with this, we have our materials, and we will get started. So to begin with, I've taken the tube that I indicated would be for the body and the hat, and I have cut 6 inches for the body, and that left a little over 4 inches for the hat. And I will take those two and set them to the side. And because it's going to take a while for the paint to dry, and it's going to need several coats of paint, I'm going to start working on the Nutcracker head. I've just attached the ornament to just a wooden dowel, so that for painting purposes I can let it dry without the sides touching on anything, and I've stuck it into just a piece of square block of foam in a container just to hold it. And now I'll begin painting the Nutcracker head. Okay, so I have my first coat on the ornament. And your goal at this point is really just to get the first coat on as evenly as possible, and you're going to need several coats to get the final color that you want. This is going to be our ultimate color, which is kind of a hot chocolate color brown. And what I'm also going to do with this paint is make sure that I get the hands colored, painted. Get the hands painted so that they will match the face. So we will let the first coat dry, we'll work on the hands and come back. This little hand just keeps running away. Okay, we've had a few more coats added to our Nutcracker head, and it's looking very good. We may do one more final coat, and we've also added the paint to our hands. Okay, so now I've taken the tube for the legs and cut the two leg pieces 7.5 inches each. So I have a body that is 6.5 inches. So I've made the legs 7.5 inches each. And now I'm just going to paint the legs using just this white acrylic paint. Okay, and I have now finished the first coat of paint on the legs, and just gonna let that dry before adding another coat. And for good coverage and less brush strokes, I am using a sponge brush. Okay, next we will add the cardstock to our cardboard cylinder. To measure, we will simply roll it and then mark it with a pen. So we know where to trim. And then we will mark our top edge the same. To ensure a straight cut, I'm going to use my Cricut cutter, but obviously a pair of scissors will work just fine. The easiest and smoothest way I have found to do this is to use a glue stick. I'm using a generous amount because I want to be sure that the adhesion will be permanent. I'm doing just a little bit to start, making sure that the edges are good. And that it lines up correctly. I have just a tiny bit excess on both ends, which is fine because I'd rather have too much than not enough. If it's too much, I can always trim it later. If it's too short, I would have to start over with a new piece. And just continue the process. Smoothing as I go. Give it a little more time. If it doesn't get where I want it in a few more minutes, then I will use a glue gun to seal it. And since it's not sticking as well as I would like. I'm going to just do the final seal with a very thin strip of hot glue, just to make sure that there are no issues later with the adhesion. We will use the same technique for the hat. I have closed the seams using bling wrap and hot glue, and I will next repeat this process for the two arms. Okay, so for the arms, we have one arm that is been cut for 7.5 inches. That one will hang straight at its side. The second arm I have cut into these angles, opposite angles, not the cleanest cuts, but it'll do. And with that, I'm going to be able to make the arm joint bend. This will be covered when I finish with the cardstock to make sure that you can't see the spaces there, but it will give us the desired effect of having a bent arm. Okay, so at this point we now have the bodies done, and I have put just a round circle covering the top and the bottom on the body section. The hat, I have the round circle for the top. I've left the bottom part open because it will need to go on the head of our soldier. I have the arm covered, and I have the circle at the top only where the shoulder is, but not at the bottom because we'll need to add our hand. And I have also finished the arm that is going to hold the spear. So in connecting this elbow joint, I had some issues with getting a good clean seam line here. So what I did is just covered it with some bling wrap. I will put bling wrap at the wrist section of both arms, and also on this arm, just to make it look more intentional. But I did have some aesthetic issues with that, so I think it's now been covered well. But that was a little bit of difficulty for me in getting that joint exactly like I want it, but I think this will work well now. I have finished painting the ornament for the head, but the paint was more of a matte dry, and I'm just not really happy aesthetically with the look. So I'm going to repaint this one more time with a satin finish paint before I attach the head to the body. The legs were painted earlier and are dry now. Again, I was using a matte white, and just to give it a little extra oomph, I went over it with Mod Podge and added just a little bit of the fine powdered glitter to the Mod Podge so that it has a glossiness to it with a little bit of a glitter effect in the paint. So the legs are finished, and I also did the same thing with the box that the soldier will stand on. I have painted both the lid and the base of the box with the white paint, and then went over it with the Mod Podge gloss. So I will do some more blinging of the box, and will most likely use some of the leftover cardstock to cut out some stars to decorate our box. So the work continues. So for the shoes, I've taken the tube, a tube the same size as the one for the legs, and I took the pool noodles and I measured out just a little cutout, and so that it will have the little indentation, and show you from the side how that looks. And with that, I initially thought I would do it more in the middle, but I decided that it works better this way, to to just be able to do that. So what I will do next is cover these with the cardstock, and be sure to bring the cardstock around the back to close in the shoe. Level all of this out, and that will take care of our shoes. Okay, so what we will be doing here, we've got this part cut, and instead of folding it under, I've decided to just try to cut it where it'll stop at the end. I think that looks a little more natural than the way it was looking when I folded it. And then to get the sides, what I've done is kind of position this in place, then took another piece of cardstock, put it on the side, and then just took an ink pen to trace kind of how that would go. And then once I trace that outline, we'll cut that out. Glue this instead of the foam so that it has time to cool and not melt the foam. Okay, and now just put this in and smooth it down. It doesn't take a long time to cool it down to keep from melting the foam. As long as you don't put it directly on the foam and you count to at least 5 to 10. Give it just a few seconds to cool down, just a few degrees, and then you can put it on the foam without it damaging the foam. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing on this side, and she's going to overlap a little bit, but I don't think it looks bad. So I'm going to go with it. And same process. Get some glue on it. Careful not to burn myself. And we're going to do the same thing. Get that in there. Push it all the way back. And smooth it down. Okay, so what I think I want to do here is we'll bring this around, and then I'll do the rest of the boot part. But for that gap, I'm going to come through with some fur, and that'll cover that up. Some fur. So let's give it a try and see what happens. Okay, so we need to just glue all of this down. And that seems to be in place, and then I'm just going to bring it around to tuck it in between the two legs. The next part is my boot. That's just going to kind of come all the way around. And come in that way. So I just need a longer piece. And how high do I want the boot? I am absolutely not using measuring on this, eyeballing everything, but that doesn't mean that that's what everyone else should do. Some things for me are extremely trial and error. This is one of them. So I'm just gonna eyeball that. That's how much more I need it. And I said I wanted it about twice as wide. So we'll come about to here. Can't see my markings. And come about there into about there. Okay. Okay. So now we're gonna try to cover up some of our trouble spots with some fur. I have some faux fur scraps that I have on hand, and that's what I'm using for this project. And my plan will be to just cover that little gap area with the faux fur. And I think that's going to work okay. So just kind of measure out what I need. And then I'm going to hot glue it on. There we go. And then I'm just going to bring it around and continue that process, making sure that my big gap over here gets covered. I did basically the same thing with last year's Nutcracker by using this is the pipe cleaner, and I just used some of that and use that to cover up my gap between the boot and the actual shoe. So you can find other items to work in the spot. Get creative. Okay, and so now I have finished going around and adding some bling wrap to all of our edges. I'll probably still add some to the wrists, but I've cleaned that up. And as you can see, I've also added some fur to the top of the boots, which took care of the issue of them being uneven. Now he looks like he's ready to go do patrol in the snow. Now for the hardest part, to do the face. So my goal is to recreate the very lovely face of last year's Nutcracker. So I don't have a template where I can trace anything. I'm simply going to look at that face and try to draw it here. So what I did last time is I drew it first and then I went back and painted it. Just using a pen. Use a pencil. It might give you the ability to erase, but I don't think I can make it show up that well on top of the paint. Okay, so here goes. So determining, first I'm going to try to do the eyebrows. So I'm looking at the face and you're looking at what I'm drawing. And I guess the other part is to make sure that you know where the head is going to sit, so that you get your eyebrows and everything in proper position. So if my head is going to sit here, then the eyebrows are going to be in this general area. Okay, so if you're trying to follow with me and do this at home, I will make sure there's a picture of the face that I'm looking at, so that if I can figure out how to do a split screen, that's what I'll do for you. Otherwise, you can just make the marks you see me making. So really, I just needed the hat to kind of make sure that the eyebrows weren't too high or too low. I think that's pretty decent, so I don't need the hat anymore for now. I don't have to try to hold that. So now I just need to finish trying to draw these, recreate these eyebrows. I think that's a little fluffy for an eyebrow. Probably need to bring it back some. I'm gonna try to do the same thing on this side. We're having some lighting issues. And add my ring light and see if that helps any. Helps them. Although, the only real problem is I can't see what I'm doing. Okay, I think that's a little bit better to help you see. Okay. Not kind of sketch in versus draw. It's just a little more forgiving for me. Kind of help me to make changes as necessary when I sketch in. Okay, I think that looks like two. They're a little further apart than on the other one, so I can sketch them closer. Bring this one in a little bit more. Okay, it's much better. Okay, that is much better. Okay, those are our eyebrows, which we will color in and paint in. And if we want to check with our hat, still looks pretty good. Now, we'll do the eyes. And the eyes are kind of a half moon shape. Okay, we'll try the other side. Okay. How do we feel about the eyes? I feel like this one should be out a little bit more. This one maybe tint it up more as well. Okay, I think for now I'll leave it there. We'll start on our nose. That'll help us to figure out how we're doing with the eyes and whether they need to move. So in my sample, move the camera for just a minute and put them side by side. The light is kind of in the way, but we're not too far off. Won't be identical, obviously, but similar. Okay, this nose. It looks like the nose starts about halfway. I think these eyes are not as deep as my other eyes. Let's come down a little bit more. starts about halfway down on the other one. So we're going to center it. Halfway. And then comes down at an angle on both sides. And I might have him out a little too far, but let's see. I feel like it's off. It should be over here a little bit more this way. The eyes should be out a little bit more this way. A little too much space between them. There we go. Might be giving him too big of a nose. Okay. And then we're going to come in and then come straight across. Next is the mustache. And it might be easier on this part to just hold it, for me at least. Alright, so a mustache is coming directly under the nose. How far out do we want it? I think about to there. It does not look straight yet. It looks uneven. I think that looks a little bit better. My nose. And this is the point of the sketching. Keep going until you get where you want it. So I haven't started painting yet, so it can be changed as much as needed. I think I want the mustache to come out a little teensy bit more. Yeah. One more. Mustache is a big part of the Nutcracker. So I'm just comparing where the eyes are with the mustache on the other one. Okay, so now I think I'm ready to start him curling the mustache. Okay. I'm going to try to do the other side. When things start curling. We lost a hand. Okay, let me put that back. All right, I'm trying to stay even with the other side. But we started coming up. And I've tried to bring the mustache up, kind of in concert with where the eyebrows are coming down. It's trying to give me a kind of a goal post and a marker. I can be consistent. Smoother swoop there. This one's a little more stilted. So I'm going to round that a little bit. I'll color it in with the paint. I think that'll make it a little smoother. Definitely not completely the same, but very similar. So now, how puffy do I want the mustache? I'm going to come in directly under the nose and start my part, my mustache part. Still trying to keep it centered. I think that's pretty centered. Okay, so now mustache down. And the other marker with the hat to mark the top. Well, we know that this is gonna go in to here and it's gonna sink down. We're gonna cut a hole and let that sink down in there, so we have to keep in mind how far down we want the mouth. So I think this is pretty good. I just want to curl it. And you see with the sketching, you can it's very forgiving. You draw a hard line, you got to commit to that. But with the sketching, you don't. Alrighty. Now we'll do the other side. Okay, that's a little high, so I can just sketch it down to be a little more even with the other side. Give them a little more of a point. And we will put in a couple of little circles. Give them some rosy cheeks with the paint. They'll probably go there and there, but I'm not going to draw those in, because once his face is fully done, I'll put them most likely there. But this is out a little far over here, so they'll probably just go there and there. But that'll be at the end. So we're almost done. Definitely starting to have a face. Now we have to do the eyes. How much of the white do you want to leave showing? Okay. Again, another kind of trial and error. Start on them and just kind of see what looks like a more natural looking eye. I think we're pretty good on that. Okay, I'm going to start painting. So, let me get the next tool. So what I did last year, because again, I'm not really an artist or anything like that, I just like making things. So I used a tool like this instead of a paintbrush. And I literally put the paint on and then just, again with my sketching, very carefully filled in my lines. I really didn't feel like my hand was steady enough to do it with a paintbrush or even a detail paintbrush. If you're a better painter than me, then that's what you can use. But if not, you don't have something like this, you can cheat. Use a pencil, ballpoint pen, something like that. You just need something sharp and pointy, hard, that you can use to sketch out the outline here. So let me get the paint and we'll get started on the next part of his face. Okay, I have my black paint and my little tool, and we'll get started. So I'm committing now to this face as I've drawn it or sketched it, and I'm just going to pretty much repeat the same process with the paint that I did with my ink pen. Again, if you're a better painter, you can just fill your lines in with paint and a paintbrush and probably do it quicker. And I did go get a detail brush for these middle fill-in spots. I'm definitely going to use my tool for the edges, but to fill in a big area like this, where I'm just filling it in, I feel comfortable enough with my skills to use a detail brush. So just be careful with the outlining. Don't outline the iris unless you're going to paint it black. If you're going to paint it green or blue or hazel or brown, then outline it with the color you're going to use to paint the iris, so you don't have blue eyes with a black trim. Okay, so I have all the black areas painted in, and now it's time to do the white part of the eyes. So I've got some white acrylic paint, and I'm just going to very carefully try to fill in the white area. I think it's better if I hold it in my hand. Not sure that does. I have to bring in a little more black there, and then I think that'll be fine. Okay, so now while I'm waiting for the eyes to dry so I can finish the face, I'm going to go back here. They're nice and dry. And the only thing we're going to need to do to attach them is to glue them on. For this one, it'll be easy. For the other hand that needs to hold the spear, it's going to be a need to put a hole through it for the spear. So I guess before I put that on, I am going to go ahead and put some bling wrap around the arms, the wrist part of the arms. So I'll do that first, and then we will attach the hands. Okay, I changed my mind about the bling wrap, and I decided we're going to just go with a little bit more fur. Think Dr. Shivago. Now with the fur on, we can go ahead and attach the hand. The easy one, the right hand. We'll need a little more effort to attach the left with the spear, but we'll get it done. Okay, so for the spear, I need to just go straight through and try not to crush and break this. So what I need is something that will be sharp and pointy that can get all the way through. I'm going to start the hole with the same little tool that I was using to paint. Find center. And start the hole. And then should be able to come straight through it with the pointy end of the spear. Now that I've come through that, make sure it's going to be smooth, and then I'll just thread it through. So this is not the one I'm going to use for the actual spear, so we're going to switch it out for the real spear and go from there. Okay, so for the spear, what I have used is a Christmas ornament. tiny treasures and just one of the little kind of pointy looking ornaments. I painted my wooden dowel white. So now I'm just simply going to slide the spear through the hole. Now we get to attach our head. So to do this part, we're going to place a small hole in the center here so that the lower part of the ornament can go down in it, and then the head will rest on the cardstock piece at the top. And there we go. And no, he won't have a neck. So now that we know that the hole works, we're just going to take the head out, add a very large amount of hot glue, and then put it back in. Okay, so now we have the head on. And the next thing will be to decorate the uniform. And with that, you can kind of just play with it whatever you like. I'm going to use some bling wrap. I'm going to use the little glittery balls to make like buttons for his uniform. So just decorate the uniform, and when you are done and happy with how cute the uniform is, we'll move on to the hair and the hat. We're almost done. Okay, so for the hair, I am going to use some faux fur. It's what I used on the previous Nutcracker. So I don't need it to go all the way to the top because we're going to have a hat. So it's just a matter of coming around the sides, making it as long or as short as you like, and making sure that it comes up high enough to go just under your hat. You don't want to waste it by putting fur under the hat that's not going to be seen, but you do want to get it to the point where it will be just under the hat. So to start, just want to mark how high up your hat, where your hat is. You need to just take your pen and do your marking. Once you know where your hat is, you're happy with the placement of your hat, and then just kind of make some lines so you know this is how far your fur hair has to go. So if your question is, what if I don't have faux fur? You'll have to just find other materials that look like hair. You might want to try something like some foam batting. You could do something like that. Yarn. You may just have to go to a craft store and look for things that look like hair. You also have the choice of not using white hair. You could have a Nutcracker with dark hair. You could paint on hair. So there are options for the hair. I happen to have the faux fur, and so I used it last year on the Nutcracker I did last year, and I like the look, so I'm going to use it again this year for this year's Nutcracker. So I've made my marking, and now I'm going to get ready to figure out how I want the hair to look. Do I want it all the way down? Do I want him to have a shorter amount of hair? My last year Nutcracker, his hair, as you see him in the back, comes all the way down to the side of his non-existent neck. So I think this year I'm going to make the hair a little shorter and let this one have shorter hair. So I'm just going to go to my markings and determine where to make my cuts. and we will attach it with the hot glue. Okay, and then we just add our next bit of glue, trying to get it to lay flat as much as possible. And as we come around to this side, you just have to be mindful of where you're going to need to stop on the side of the face. Okay, so for the rosy cheeks, I'm just using, I have some pink acrylic paint, whatever color you want his cheeks to be, and decide how big you want the little rosy cheek circle to be. Again, this was last year's, and so I'm pretty much going to go about the same size for this one. So what I'm going to do is use, this is just a gold leafing pen that I happen to have, but what I'm looking for is this flat round circle. And all I'm going to do is get the pink paint. You just want to dab it on, so you don't want it heavy. So, to show you how we get that, the little rosy cheek, we've got the paint at the bottom of my gold leafing pen. I'm just using a round surface that I can apply the pink paint to dab it on to the cheek. And we're going to do it in the area directly above the curve in the mustache. And we want to just come in flat as possible, right above the curve in the mustache, and try to get a round circle. And there, now you have your blushing little pink blushing for your nutcracker. And when that dries, it should smooth out. So any flat round surface that's about the size you want to use to get you those circles. And then once we get the hat finished, we need to finish the box that he will stand on. I think I'm going to add some stars to that, and then we will mount him to his box, and then he will be ready.